Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. APW Sports signing in, and we are oh so close to football season. Thank God. Yes! But today we're going to react to an article that talks about every team's strength and weaknesses going into this 2025 season. I'm going to give my thoughts on this. But before I get into that, make sure you guys leave this video a like as it continues to help this channel to grow and it continues to beat the YouTube algorithm and gets more eyes on this channel and continues to get good content for y'all. And then, if you're watching this and you're not sub, go ahead and click the subscribe button and notification bell so you will not miss anything that I post, football or WWE related, with SummerSlam around the corner. But without further ado, let's dive into it. Today's video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. For me, it is very important to have a VPN to protect my online privacy. It'd be very, very creepy if there was someone out there who kept a log of every single thing that you did online. So why let your internet provider really do that to you online? The best thing to do is to get yourself a VPN, and why not go with ExpressVPN, the best VPN available. Personally, I like it for the fact that you can unlock Netflix shows that you do not get in the US market. Now, one show that I've started to get myself into is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You search Brooklyn Nine-Nine in the US, doesn't come up, but you can switch your location to Canada and you can research Brooklyn Nine-Nine again, and bam, it pops up right then and there, and you can catch up on your episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Now, if you click the link in the description below, you will get 3 free months of ExpressVPN. Just by clicking the link below and you sign up today, you will get 3 months free of ExpressVPN. All you have to do is click the link down below and you will get ExpressVPN. Now, let's just get back to the video. All right, as we got here, the Bleacher Report article, every NFL roster's biggest strength and weakness before the 2025 preseason, 2025 season, same difference, but let's get right to the first team. The Arizona Cardinals' biggest need, right guard, wide receiver, linebacker, which I can agree. I think the linebacker play with the Cardinals still needs a little bit of improvement. Wide receiver, I think outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., you could use some more weapons in the wide receiver position. We know we got Trey McBride at tight end. Right guard, you can use a little boost to this offensive line. I think the running game was solid, but I think it could be better. Offensive backfield, I don't know about, well, biggest strength, yes, James Conner. I really like James Conner, but backfield, Trey Benson, we shall see, but I do like James Conner though. Biggest weakness is the secondary, and I think that is something they can use boosting in with this defense. I know coming into this offseason, the biggest needs for the Arizona Cardinals, most of them went on defensive side of the ball, outside of maybe another playmaker, opposite side of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. I'm still in the question about Kyler Murray, but yeah, they did draft Will Johnson and Denzel Burke from The Ohio State University. But I don't know. And they did, Starling Thomas just tore his ACL. So maybe they can use a boost at the corners, even though they have Budda Baker, who's still one of the better safeties in the league. But I can see that. Next is with the Atlanta Falcons. Their biggest needs is corner, center, and the interior of their defensive line. Both the center and interior defensive lines did take a hit with the losses of Drew Dalman and Grady Jarrett, both to the Bears. Corner, outside of A.J. Terrell, I could see where that position could use a little bit of a boost. The biggest strength is still the offensive line, which I totally agree with. They have one of the better ones. Despite losing Dalman, I still think their offensive line is a very solid offensive line. Jake Matthews, Caleb McGarry, very good at the tackle and left guard position. Chris Lindstrom is a very good offensive lineman. So I could see that. Defensive line, I think that could be a big boost. James Pierce and Jaylon Walker, who they both drafted in the first round, I think that could be a boost. Maybe they can use some playing time. They can use a little bit of the development, but I think getting those two guys would be a boost. Like I said, losing Grady Jarrett is a hurt, but I can see where if Jaylon Walker and James Pierce don't show flashes or don't show improvements, I can see where their defensive line could be their biggest weakness. So I can see that. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Their biggest needs is linebacker, interior offensive line, and cornerback. They still have struggled a bit to replace Patrick Queen, who went on to sign with their rivals last season. The interior of the offensive line, possibly. Cornerback, I'm not sure. You got Marlon Humphrey. You just signed Jair Alexander. I'm not going to say that's the biggest need at the cornerback position. Nate Wiggins, going to get to his second year. I think he is a player that can break out. So corner, I'm not going to say necessarily that's the biggest need. But I think maybe another weapon, maybe. But outside of that, I wouldn't say corner. Offensive backfield, of course, you got Lamar, you got Derrick Henry. Enough said. 2 All-Pros, 1 MVP candidate, 1 potential MVP candidate with Derrick Henry. Yeah, biggest strengths. Weakness, secondary, I'm sorry, I'm not sure about that one. You got Kyle Hamilton. You got, like I said, Jair Alexander. You got Marlon Humphrey. Maybe a little bit of depth. You got Malachi Starks in the draft. I don't know. I would say the opposite linebacker position, maybe opposite side of Patrick Queen. I'm sorry, I would not say secondary. They have a potentially very solid secondary. I'm not going to lie. So secondary, maybe not. I wouldn't say that. Next for the Buffalo Bills, biggest needs, linebacker, safety, and corner. All defense. Yes, that's true. Maybe a number 1 true wide receiver could be in the fold for them. That could be something as well. Then you have the offensive backfield, the biggest strength for Cook and Allen. Cook's starting to hold out. He's showing up to training camp, so that's a good sign. But they're probably going to have to pay him at some point. But, yeah. Secondary, I can totally agree. They did re-sign Tre'Davious White, but Rasul Douglas is now out the door. He's still not signed. Christian Benford is kind of, man. So, yeah. Maxwell Hairston, they did pick in the first round, but it's like, that secondary can definitely use a little bit more. So I do agree. Micah Hyde enjoyed a poor year of losses over the last couple of years. Yeah. I would say, yeah. The secondary for them, maybe outside of another wide receiver, maybe, I think could be a big need for this team, unless Keon Coleman steps up. But yeah, secondary. Next is the Carolina Panthers. Biggest need, corner, center, and edge. Yeah, I think this team could use a bit of pass rush help. Corner, outside of J.C. Horn, possibly. The center position, I think offensive line for the Panthers could definitely use some shoring up in the interior, so I do agree there. The interior of their defensive line, Derek Brown will be back, so I think that will be better. So I also believe that maybe another wide receiver or so, maybe secondary. Secondary outside of J.C. Horn definitely could use it. They did sign Trayvon Murray, but they got a lot of youth on their secondary. They picked Latham Ransom in the 4th round for The Ohio State University. So I think this secondary could use some beefing. It is a bit young. So I can see this. And like I said, probably another wide receiver outside of a Xavier Legette. So yeah, I can see that. Maybe another tight end, maybe. So I can see that. Now for the Chicago Bears, my Bears, biggest needs, edge rusher and running back and safety. I definitely agree on the edge, even though they signed the Dangbo. I could see running back if DeAndre Swift doesn't have an improvement of a year. Safety, I like Byer, I like Brisker, but I think Brisker's problem more is health than his play. When he's playing at a very good level. It's just he missed most of last year with that concussion. Biggest strength, whoever would have said that for the Bears, is the offensive line. I don't think we could ever say the biggest strength of the Bears, and probably most of my lifetime might be outside of the 05, 06, around that time, was the offensive line. The Bears' offensive line is the biggest strength. I can agree there. Biggest weakness is the offensive backfield. I can see that. I think the biggest weakness, me personally, I would say another edge. Offensive backfield. Running back can use some improvement. I thought they were going to go early with the running back in the draft instead of Luther Burden III. But I think if DeAndre Swift kind of improves on 2024, I think we will be okay. But I could agree running back is a position that we can use some help in. Caleb improving in year 2. So offensive backfield for me would be the bigness. I don't think for me, maybe. I think the biggest weakness is probably edge rush and pass rush. Not a great team at getting out to the quarterback last season if they didn't blitz. So I would say, yeah, offensive backfield / edge. Cincinnati Bengals, biggest needs, interior offensive line, edge, and safety. They did just wrap up Shamar Stewart's deal. You got Trey Hendrickson, you better pay the man. Safety, definitely. You lost Jesse Bates and Von Bell over the last couple of years, and you really haven't done much to improve it. Biggest strength, passing game, definitely with Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. That stuff said. And the biggest weakness, yes, is that defensive front. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, it wasn't much to be desired. It wasn't. He led the league in sacks, and the rest of the team was just 1 sack above him. So safety, I could definitely see that. Interior offensive line, yeah, it would help to improve your running game to kind of offset or kind of not make them as one-dimensional as they were last year. So I can see those things for the Cincinnati Bengals, but you got to get that Trey Hendrickson deal done before you do anything. Next up is the Cleveland Browns. Biggest needs, yes, quarterback, wide receiver, and safety. Biggest strength is their defensive line. They did draft Mason Graham from that team up north. Myles Garrett, we know he's a defensive player of the year candidate every year. You got Isaiah McGuire. Wasn't great last year, but he can be a boost. Dalvin Tomlinson, departure, but like I said, you got Mason Graham. So, and then you have Jim Schwartz defense where they really get out the court that they really cause havoc amongst that defense. So I think defensive line, yes. You need a quarterback because who knows who's going to start this year, whether it's Flacco, whether it's maybe Dylan Gabriel, maybe Kenny Pickett, maybe Shedeur Sanders. You need a quarterback. And then your backfield, not great. And then on top of that, you have my boy, I hate to say my boy Quinshawn Judkins from DRH State University. He has some legal troubles, and he's probably going to miss or be suspended at some point. Jerome Ford, I don't think he's a day one starting back. I think, in my opinion, he's more of a complimentary back. Lose Nick Chubb, even though Nick Chubb has dealt with injuries for a good part of his career, and that's over with. So, yeah, offensive backfield, definitely a weakness. Quarterback, running back. You need wide receiver help, too, outside of Jerry Jeudy. So, yeah, I'm not expecting much from this Cleveland Browns offense, period, in 2025, honestly. So, next is the Dallas Cowboys. Defensive line, tackle, and running back are their biggest needs. I think the offensive line could use a little bit of help. They did draft Tyler Booker from Alabama, but that's more on the interior. Defensive line, you lose DeMarcus Lawrence. You got Michael Parsons, who probably going to get a deal wrapped up at some point. You still need running back help. You get Javonte Williams from the Broncos, but I still think this team can use a little bit more improvement in their run game. So I can see that. Run defense, that was the Cowboys' issues in most of 2024, and it started at the end of 2023, where teams figured out they could run the football heavy on this Cowboys defense, and I still don't think they've done much to fix that. So their run defense is not great. I still don't think it's going to be good going into 2025, and how can it create? They need to improve that, but I just don't see it. I see the offensive improvement with adding George Pickens, and you get Javonte Williams outside of his injuries can be a very productive back. But, yeah, this team really needs to stop the run before they do anything, and I just don't think they've done much to do that. Next is the Denver Broncos. Wide receiver, tight end, and corner are their biggest needs. Maybe another corner? I don't think so. Riley Moss has played good. Maybe they can use, and Patrick Surtain, we know he's the best corner in the league. I don't know about corner. Tight end, they could use a little bit of added production at the tight end position. They did just wrap up Courtland Sutton as a deal, as I talked about this in this video. Maybe use another weapon. They did just sign Johnny Barron, adding Johnny Barron in the draft and Tyler Logo Hufanga. So I wouldn't say secondary is a big lead. I'm not going to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest. I don't think secondary. Biggest weakness is offensive skill positions. They did sign my boy J.K. Dobbins from The Ohio State University. R.J. Harvey is a very solid pickup in the draft. Yeah, Austin, he got an Austin Eckler comparison, which I think could be dual threat with helping Bo Nix improve. I would say a wide receiver, I can see that. Outside of Sutton, Marvin Mims has his ups and downs. You got Troy Franklin, who has potential. They picked Pat Bryant in the 3rd round. Devon Valet, but I would say wide receiver is probably a more bigger need than anything outside of Courtland Sutton. Marvin Mims had flashes, but I still think you need another go-to weapon at tight end or wide receiver to help Bo Nix to continue to get better. So I can see that. Next is the Detroit Lions. Biggest need is edge, interior offensive line, and linebacker. The retirement of Frank Ragnow hurts this team a lot. And that hurts this team a lot. Edge rusher, I'm not sure what Aiden Hutchinson is going to be coming off of the leg injury. And the things that they did last year to try to help just did not work. Linebacker position, you get a little older with Anzalone at linebacker, so I can see that. So offensive weapons, yeah, we know we got Gibbs, we know we got Montgomery, we know we got Amon Ruby, we know we got Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. Yeah, we know they have weapons. So, and the biggest weakness, interior offensive line, I could say that, but yeah, Kevin Zeitler left in free agency. Ragnow is retired. Glasnow, he's one of the better guards in the league, in my opinion. He's one of the better guards. But they can use a little bit of help in that interior, but I think opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, how are you gonna get out to the quarterback? That's my biggest question for him. How are you gonna get out to the quarterback? And I think that is going to tell a lot about this Lions defense. And on top of that, you got a lot of coaching changes. Next is the Green Bay Packers. Biggest needs, corner, edge, and D-line. Corner, losing Jair Alexander. Well, they let him go, which I can see a little bit. Edge rush and their defensive line. I think they're improved. I think another need would be wide receiver, a veteran wide receiver. That's just me. Biggest strength is their run game. They have a very good offensive line. Josh Jacobs had another tremendous season in 2024. So I can see that as being their biggest strength. Them running a football that set up so much of what they did last year on the offensive side of the ball. Biggest weakness, defensive line, absolutely. You got 26 in pass rush win rate. They did add Baron Sorrell in the 4th round, but it's like, yeah, I think, edge rush, D-line, period. Beefing themselves up front would be a lot. Cornerback would be a lot as well. So I'm interested to see how this defense is going to look. I hope it looks bad, to be honest. Yeah, I can see that. Houston Texans. Interior offensive line, defensive line, and safety. I like P-Trey. Stingley, they have secondary, biggest strength. I can agree there. Interior offensive line, they lost Kenya Green. They traded Laramie Tunsil, which I still think is a head scratcher. Safety, they did add C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but I don't know. Safety, I'm not sure about that. It's crazy how they have the biggest need secondary. Biggest need safety, but biggest strength secondary. That don't work. But biggest weakness, I think, is still the offensive line. Still the offensive line. They added Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson. I still think the offensive line is the biggest weakness of this football team. And that's, I think, part of the reason why C.J. Stroud kind of have a setback in 2024 was because of the offensive line. C.J. Stroud from The Ohio State University had a bit of a setback, so I could say that. Maybe another weapon outside of Nico Collins. Jaden Higgins in the draft. I think he could have the possibility to break out. But if they would have got another veteran weapon, that would have been nice. But we shall see. The Indianapolis Colts' biggest needs, the offensive line, their interior, linebacker, quarterback. When you lose Will Freeze and you lose Ryan Kelly, both in free agency, I can see that. Biggest strength, run game. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, he is a very good running back. But when, like I said, you lose two of your biggest pieces on your interior of your offensive line, that's going to change things. Even though they do, depends on who start, Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. They both are mobile quarterbacks, so that can help. But yes, the biggest weakness is their passing game. They do have some weapons when we're talking about Pittman, Downs, and Tyler Warren. But it's just, who in the hell is going to be throwing a football for this football team? Who in the hell is going to be under center? And I think Anthony Richardson has to be the guy. If he's not, I'm not, like I said on his channel plenty of times, I'm not a big believer in Daniel Jones. So I think if Anthony Richardson doesn't have a good year 3, I think this team may have to go elsewhere and probably looking to draft next year to get a quarterback. Next is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Biggest need, safety, tight end, and corner. I hate this article at some points. Biggest need is tight end, but you have their biggest strength, pass catchers. Make it make sense. But either way it goes, corner and safety, I've always felt the Jaguars secondary was a need. They did add, like I said, Travis Hunter, but I don't know how many snaps he's going to play defensively and how many snaps he's going to play offensively. I don't think in this NFL level, him being full-time both is going to be a reality. I know he wants it to be, but I just don't think it's going to be a reality. So it's interesting to see how they're going to handle him. But the biggest strength being pass catchers, Brian Thomas Jr. Outside of that, I don't know. Biggest strength? Biggest weakness is secondary, obviously. They did sign Jordan Lewis. They do have bring in Eric Murray, but I don't. Yeah, this team, I think they can improve, but their secondary still leaves some question marks. And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see where Travis Hunter is going to be and how much he's going to play on that defensive side of the ball. Next is the Kansas City Chiefs. Biggest needs, defensive line, interior offensive line, and edge. George Karlaftis is a very solid pass rusher. Chris Jones, albeit one of the better players in the league, but he's starting to show some flashes that his play may not be the same. So even though this defense was the biggest strength, we're talking about McDuffie, we were talking about Steve Spagnuolo ran this defense, but I can see that being that has been their biggest strength, especially last year. That's what got them to the Super Bowl. But the biggest weakness is the offensive weapons, and I will agree. Marquise Brown has been dealing with injuries. Rashee Rice missed most of last year and has a potential suspension. Travis Kelce is on the last legs of his career, let's going to be honest. Jalen Royals, who they drafted, needs some development. Xavier Worthy could develop into that number 1 pass catcher. Sky Moore is basically out of the picture at this point. I had some high hopes for him in this offense, but it just hasn't worked out. So I could see that. And yeah, weapons. Raiders, biggest needs, corner, linebacker, wide receiver. I can agree on all this. You get a guy like Geno Smith, but it's not much to throw to at wide receiver. You got 2 tight ends of Browers and Mayer, and then you bring in a guy like an Ashton Genty to be the biggest strength in their offensive weapons. I'm not sure about offensive weapons. You got 2 good tight ends. You get Geno Smith, but I think you still need some help at wide receiver, and you still need help in the corners. Where we're talking about, they got Jeremy Chin in safety, Eric Stokes and Darian Porter. Yeah, this safety needs. The secondary is not the greatest. I've always said that about the Raiders. Their biggest issues over the last few years, at least for me watching this team, has been the secondary on their defensive side of the ball. So I think, honestly, that is a big weakness for them. Next is the LA Chargers. And I'm gonna go through this a little bit quickly. We got corner, wide receiver, D-line. Wide receiver outside of Lad McConkey. Quentin Johnson, I just don't think he's reliable at this point. Corner, I could see that being a help, is something that they also need. D-line, Khalil Mack is getting older. Joey Bosa is now at the door. I can see that. Biggest strength offensive line, you got Joe Alt, you got Roschon Slater. A very good tackle duo, and an offensive line that added Mekhi Becton, who was a big picture for the Philadelphia Eagles championship run last year. So, yeah. Pass catchers, yes. Outside of Lad McConkey and Josh Palmer, who is a reliable target, you don't have much to throw to if you're the Chargers and Justin Herbert. So, pass catcher, biggest weakness, I can agree. Rams, you got corner, linebacker, and safety. Their biggest strength is their weapons with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams for Matthew Stafford at his disposal. You got Kyron Williams, who's reliable. Blake Corum, who I think from that team up north would probably be a bigger impact in his second year. So I can see that. Biggest need is secondary. I do agree. They were trying to get the Jalen Ramsey trade, but it didn't happen. You got Witherspoon, Forbes, Kobe Durant, who I think Kobe Durant is solid. Forbes has just not lived up to that first-round pick expectations. Darius Williams has been a mainstay on his team, but it's just like, So secondary, I can see that. Linebacker is a need as well. So, yeah, secondary, I think there's a lot to be desired at the corner and safety position for the Rams. Offensively, I think they're probably going to have to carry the bigger load, but we shall see. Dolphins, biggest needs, corner, tight end, and tackle. Losing Armstead was a big hurt. The offensive line wasn't really necessarily the best to begin with. Tight end position hasn't been great. Corner, you lose Jalen Ramsey. You get a guy like Micah Fitzpatrick. But corner, Storm Duck has a chance to break out in year 2 of his career. But offensive weapons, you got Hill, Waddle, A-Chain, who will struggle with injuries. Jalen Wright, fast, speedy duo. I'm not a big believer in this Dolphins team. I'm not a big believer. I'm just not. You got the secondary, I think is a big weakness. You add Micah Fitzpatrick, who's going to be huge, but you also add Melifonwu and Ashton Davis, but yeah, I can see this being a weakness. Minnesota Vikings, biggest needs, corner, safety, and linebacker. I can agree because this defense it's a little bit older. You got Dallas Turner, who not necessarily, I don't think he, like, potential-wise, he didn't live up to what I thought he was going to be. But biggest strength is just supporting cash. You got Addison, you got a guy like TJ Hawkinson, you got Jordan Addison. Then you add with your offensive line, Freeze, Kelly, and Donovan Jackson from The Ohio State University to boost your offensive line. But it's most important is J.J. McCarthy still. But supporting cast, yes. Secondary, like I said, Harrison Smith is getting older. You add Blackman, you add Rogers, you add Jeff Okudah from The Ohio State University. Byron Murphy has been great in the slot, but I still think the secondary can use, let's just say, a little bit of help if we're going to be honest. New England Patriots, edge, wide receiver, and linebacker. Yeah, I still think they can use another weapon outside of Stephon Diggs. Edge rusher, you can use some big pass rush help. But secondary is a big strength with a guy like a Christian Gonzalez. You add Carlton Davis. You have Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers, who are very solid at their safety position. So I think that is a strength. Biggest weakness is the offensive line. We shall see. Cole Strange, it was a little rough, but they add Will Campbell, who I think could be very good for them at tackle. You got Morgan Moses and Garrett Bradbury, who you added in the offseason. I wouldn't say this is the biggest weakness for this Patriots team. Maybe I could say wide receiver opposite of Stephon Diggs. I can see that as possibly being it. Another pass rusher to get out there the pass. So it could be something else as well. But offensive line, I'm not going to say that's the biggest weakness, but I probably go lean more towards wide receiver. New Orleans Saints, biggest needs, quarterback, edge, and corner. Cam Jordan is getting up there older in his career, so I can see you can probably use some younger on the pass rush. You got my boy Chase Young from The Ohio State University, who has been dealing with some injuries, I think, coming back. He should be a solid player. Tyrann Mathieu's retirement does hurt a little bit, but Isaac Yiadom, they added Justin Reed, they added Julian Blackman, to losing Will Harrison, Paulson, and Debo. So I can see that. They traded Marshawn Lattimore in the midst of last season. And their biggest weakness is definitely going to be that passing game, because you got Rattler and Haener, Jake Haener, and Tyler Shaw as your quarterbacks. The retirement of Derek Carr is hurting his football team, because going into this offseason, we thought, okay, Derek Carr could get himself to get healthy, they probably draft somebody young where Derek Carr is the bridge gap, but now that he retired, quarterback. And I think this is why I said this over the last couple of years, the Saints need to rebuild. And I think if Tyler Shaw or Spencer Rattler, one of the two could develop, you still going to be in a rebuild anyway. So I think you should spend more time developing this quarterback position than anything in 2025 for the Saints. See what you have there. If you don't have anything, you go into next year and do something. New York Giants' biggest needs: the interior offensive line, quarterback, and linebacker. Linebackers are a position of weakness on this football team, so I can agree. Quarterback, you don't know what you're going to get. Russ is named the starter at the time of me recording this, and the interior of your offensive line could be better to boost your run game, which I think whatever quarterback ends up finishing and starting the season, whatever, yeah. Offensive backfield, definitely a weakness. They picked up Cam Scatterbo in the draft. Tyrone Tracy Jr. is going to need to take another step. Devin Singletary, he's a little bit older in the tooth, so I want to see what he's going to be. And then you have a quarterback position who knows what's going to happen. This Giants team is still a mess. I think keeping Joe Shane and keeping Brian Daboll was a mistake for this football team. I think you get a new quarterback. You need to basically just not try to win much. Honestly, I thought that was a big mistake, and I might do that in a little bit of deeper video. Jets, you have wide receiver, defensive line, and quarterback. Wide receiver, outside of Garrett Wilson, I can see that being a weakness. Offensive line is a strength. Armand Mumbu. You got Elijah Vera Tucker, even though he's been dealing with some injuries throughout his career. Josh Simpson, Olu Fashanu is, I think, slated to be much better than his rookie year. So I would say the biggest strength for this team could be the corner spot with Sauce Gardner, even though they did lose DJ Reed. But the passing game, weakness, we shall see what Justin Fields from The Ohio State University and former Bear should be, pairing back with his Ohio State teammate and Garrett Wilson. But, wide receiver 2 needs a little bit of improvement. Wide receiver 2 needs help. So, yes, passing game maybe is the biggest weakness. We shall see what they're going to be. Philadelphia Eagles, D-line, corner, and safety. Biggest strength, running game, obviously, with Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts. That's easy. One of the best offensive lines in the league. So, yeah. Their biggest weakness, secondary? Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell broke out as rookies. Odori Jackson, solid. Ringo is a bit unproven, but I still think he's solid. They picked Andrew Makuba in the second round. If this team had any weakness, it probably would be their secondary. I'm not going to say it's like the weakest secondary in the league, but if you just had to pick out one weakness, I think secondary could be the spot. Trading C.J. Gardner-Johnson, yeah, secondary possibly, but nah. I ain't gonna say it's weak, but if you had to pick out anything, yes, corners, secondary could be it. Pittsburgh Steelers, wide receiver, corner, linebacker. Their biggest strength, yes, their defensive front. Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt. Yeah, that is a big defensive front strength. Biggest needs, wide receiver. I can see that with the now departed George Pickens. and DK Metcalf, which they are basically the same wide receiver. So I don't think you really improve much there. I think you basically got the same player, but just a little bit older and the same mentality. I think they're literally the same, like, mold of a football player. So they just need DK to be more consistent, but the biggest weakness is their passing game. We got to see what Aaron Rodgers is going to be. They had Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth, I think a good tight end duo, but who's going to be the wide receiver two outside of Pickens? Would it be Calvin Austin? Who knows? So, yeah, I can say that. Passing game, yeah. San Francisco 49ers' biggest needs: corner, interior offensive line, and wide receiver. Trading Deebo Samuel does hurt this team. And you got Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Ayuk, who are both recovering from injuries. You got Christian McCaffrey, who's also recovering from injuries. So, biggest strength, offensive ecosystem. I can see that with I could say that with probably the structure of the offense. I think this is more what they're talking about. But corner, losing Travarius Ward is going to hurt. Interior offensive line, yeah. And the biggest weakness, defensive line. Nick Bosa, we know I love my boy from The Ohio State University. You got first round pick of Mikael Williams. I think linebacker maybe, if we're talking about losing Drake Greenlaw, losing your secondary and Tyler Logan Hufangu. Yeah, D-line, I think you could be more physical up front for this football team, so I can see where they're coming from with this. So, yeah. Seattle Seahawks, biggest needs: interior offensive line, corner, and wide receiver. Wide receiver, you got Jackson Smith and Jigba from The Ohio State University. You added Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp's injuries. Corner, you got Woolen. You got Witherspoon. I think those are two solid corners. Interior offensive line, I think can help because you're deep. You need to have a running game outside of Sam Darnold. You do. You need to have a capable running game. They drafted Greg Zabel to help at right guard. Anthony Bradford competing for guard spot. Charles Cross has been very good over the past few years. So, yeah, I think your offensive line can use a boost. The run game can use a boost, in my opinion, in itself, to kind of take a little bit of a pressure off of Sam Darnold. And I ask Sam Darnold to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. So I can see that. Next up is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, edge rush, guard, and safety. I'm still baffled that they drafted my boy Emeka Egbuka from The Ohio State University. Maybe they see something in a Chris Godwin injury or something. I don't know. I love the player. We know I love my Ohio State boys. I love Emeka Egbuka, but for this particular Buccaneers team, I thought they should have went edge. I thought they should have went defense. I thought they could have been corner because they lost quite a few guys. Jamel Dean and Antoine Winfield Jr., solid. But outside of them two, there's not much on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary to be desired. So we know they have a strength for running game with Bucky Irvin, former Hillcrest Hawk, and you got Rashad White. So like I say, I love Egbuka, but I think for this particular football team, they should have went defense in the draft, honestly. Second to last team was the worst team in the league last year, is the Titans. Edge, linebacker, and tight end. Biggest strength is the interior of their defensive line. When you have Sweat, T'Vondre Sweat, when you have Jeffrey Simmons. I'm a Bears fan. We saw it the first game of the year how the interior, those two guys really dominated. They really dominated. Sebastian Joseph Day is another veteran they added to that group. Yeah. Edge rush, Harold Landry being gone, they could use some help there. Linebacker, they could use some help in the middle of their defense. Tight end, I think it's a big thing to be a security blanket of sorts for rookie quarterback Cam Ward. But the biggest weakness is their passing game. I think it is because they don't have much of a receiver. Treylon Burks, at the time of this video, just got released, and he already broke his collarbone during training camp. Calvin Ridley is the strength. They added Tyler Lockett and Van Jefferson, but we'll see how those two veterans work out. So I could see that, but I just think it's this year, Titans, All about developing Cam Ward. That's all this season should be about. Then last but not least, the Washington Commanders' biggest need is some more pass rush help. Tight end and linebacker Zach Ertz is getting up there in the age of his career. Bobby Wagner is also getting up there in age of his career, so maybe some youth back at those positions could help a little bit. But you do have the backfield with Brian Robinson, who's very good. Jaden Daniels, who had a tremendous rookie season. I still think this team may suffer a sophomore slump with Jaden Daniels. I will be honest. I think they may suffer it. You got Austin Eckler, who has been a safety valve in that passing game. But secondary, outside of Marshawn Lattimore, and he had some injuries last year, they draft Trey Amos. They signed Jonathan Jones from the Patriots. So I think the biggest weakness is secondary and maybe getting some edge rush, pass rush help to get after the quarterback. But hey, those are my thoughts. Leave you guys' thoughts in the comments. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. APW Sports signing out. You guys have a good day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.